Hey, what's up, guys? Hope you're having a wonderful Saturday. So, want to finish off the story about AJ Shipley, former Navy SEAL Team SEAL or SEAL Team 6. It's a very interesting story. It's sad and heartbreaking what and how the government really doesn't help them when these guys transition from their military life to civilian. But before I upload the next video, the part 3 of his story, I wanted to go ahead and feature another guy that I've always watched his videos, and I never featured one of his videos before. He goes by, I believe it's Wavy Surf Dude, something along those lines. Either way, you'll see when I pull it up. This video is entitled "The Most Notorious Impostors on the Internet," and it makes me think, what the hell is going through people's mind when they do stupid shit like this? Like, you really have to have a loose screw or something. I mean, I don't understand it. I don't know why you would parade around acting like you're something that you're not. It just really bewilders me. For instance, I had seen the other day, scrolling through the shorts and stuff like that, this video of this guy who, he's pretty, pretty chubby, but he's constantly trying to flex, like naming, oh, I got this whatever kind of shirt, $800. I got the house on the neck. I got this watch as much as your, family's cars. I got these $800 shoes, these $1,000 pants, like just trying to flex so freaking bad. And it's like, why? Dude, you're talking to fucking strangers. Who cares what you have? I could care less how much money you have. People who have money, it's kind of like that old adage, if you score a touchdown, act like you've been there before. Don't celebrate. Don't be all like, be happy. Don't like don't be hyperbolic about it. And that's how this dude is. And it made me fucking just sick to my stomach. Not just because of how much he's like, oh yeah, I own hotels in Atlantic City and in Vegas. And it comes to find out, these guys, you can't get away with shit on the internet because these guys are going to find out. And they found out, this guy had to file for bankruptcy before. He's actually broke. A lot of the places that he's staying are Airbnbs, or he's just taking, photos. He's like, oh, watch me take out, $47,000 out of my bank account. And then all it just does is show him standing outside of a bank. He never comes out with any money or anything. He just gives the perception that, oh, because he's standing outside of a bank, he's going to come out like Floyd Mayweather with a freaking bag of money, which he never does. And I'm thinking to myself, there are really people out there that do this shit constantly? And sure as shit there is. So I hope you enjoyed this next video, because it's funny, but it's sad because some people are really just not all there. So here we go. All right, so sorry about that, guys. His name is actually Wavy Web Surf. Very popular, 1.29 million subscribers. He has a lot of good content, a lot of different topics, something very similar to what I'm trying to do with many different topics, from music to you name it. So yeah, if this is your first time here, feel free to like and subscribe, leave a comment, feel free to dislike if you thought the video was crap. And for those of you guys, who are interested in a review, reaction, or even want me to create a certain video on a topic, just feel free to let me know in the comments. I appreciate all the support, guys, and thank you so much for watching. So let's get to this, because this is a very, very interesting story.
Viral stories of fraud are common on the internet, and to me, some of the most unsettling are cases involving imposters. Take, for example, crimes like stolen valor and police impersonators. The demented perpetrators of these crimes are frequently exposed in videos on YouTube. Videos that show these culprits using fake credentials and fraudulent uniforms to pose as authority figures in public. And on the other hand, you have a cohort of individuals busted for faking disability. facilities. Sick imposters posing as society's most vulnerable in an effort to solicit charity and special treatment from medical workers. And the aforementioned is really only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to viral imposter stories. From a teenager performing a police traffic stop using bogus credentials, to a sign language interpreter exposed as a fraud, to a man who allegedly faked Down syndrome for diaper changes. These are the internet's most viral imposters. Today's video is every month you'll get a snazzy. One of the most trusted and revered professions in the United States is that of the medical doctor. The profession comes with a lot of responsibility and power as well. This story involves a young man who managed to fake credentials over a period of years, successfully masquerading as a medical professional and defrauding the public out of thousands of dollars in the process. Malachi Robinson was born in West Palm Beach, Florida in May of 1997. This young man had dreams of becoming a doctor, and what we find is that in his teenage years, Malachi attempts to become one by any means necessary. In January of 2015, 17-year-old Malachi Robinson was taken into custody after it was discovered he had spent several weeks walking the halls of St. Mary's Medical Center while wearing a lab coat and stethoscope. The young man's presence being completely unauthorized, and it was obviously suspected that he was trying to pose as a doctor. When being questioned, Malachi claimed that he was shadowing a physician, even adding that the staff who reported him, quote, was supposed to know what he was doing there. When directly asked by authorities if he ever attended medical school, Malachi responded no. Naturally, because Malachi was a minor at the time, his mother would become involved in this situation. His mother was said to have defended the young man, claiming that Malachi had some sort of mental illness that he refused to take medication for. In the end, the St. Mary's Medical Facility declined to press charges, and the police ruled that no crime had been committed. Malachi was let off. But that wouldn't be the end of the doctor impersonation route for this charlatan, as later in the year he would do something along the same line. In October of 2015, Malachi was accused of spending close to 3 weeks practicing medicine without a license at New Direction, a treatment office that specialized in addiction recovery in Boynton Beach, Florida. Around this time, authorities suspected that Malachi was illegally performing massage therapy at this facility. However, the story from the rehabilitation center itself was a bit different. Employees working at the center claimed that Malachi had told them that he was 28 years old and had a PhD in psychology.
When he came to us, he said he was 28 and that he was sick for 10 years in France, and that when he came to the United States, that they made a mistake and put his date of arrival on the birth certificate instead of his date of birth.
Malachi had allegedly forged a birth certificate to reflect this age, and even allegedly provided the center a bogus diploma from Arizona State University saying that he was a doctor. Malachi wasn't actually working at the center as a massage therapist. Using these fake documents, he had managed to convince management there to allow him to have a program director job, and according to reports, he was making a $70,000 salary. In lieu of these discoveries, the Florida Department of Health had reason to believe that Malachi was misleading the public and sent him a cease and desist letter. The department has probable cause to believe that Malachi Love Robinson of West Palm Beach, Florida, is not licensed by the Department or Board of Medicine and is practicing as a medical doctor. And you think with the government now involved, this would be the end of his medical imposter activities, but it wasn't, as Malachi was somehow able to attain a certificate to provide healthcare by the American Association of Drugless Practitioners. A diploma essentially stating that he was legally allowed to perform alternative medical therapies. The organization that issues these certificates approved Mr. Robinson after reviewing copies of degrees and diplomas sent to them by mail. The procurement of this credential would keep the government off of his back for some time, though it is important to note that legally the document doesn't allow one to diagnose or treat any medical conditions. Seeing that he could now outsmart the government, he started to get more brazen. Malachi continued his fraud throughout South Florida, attempting to practice medicine at anywhere that would give him an opportunity. He maintained a plethora of websites that advertised his practice, some of the websites allegedly hosting fake consumer reviews that helped build up his reputation. On practitioner review site healthgrades.com, Malachi was listed as a doctor with a specialization in naturopathy and psychology. In the biography of the page, he wrote, quote, "I value my practice skills, which include great communication skills as well as timely and prompt care. I am a strong believer that patients in general are the strongest medical tools there is."
Oh my God,
the man's
what
profile
the
boasting
hell?
a 5-star review. And as you can see here, he was the owner and physician of New Birth New Life Medical Center, LLC. In 2016, at the age of 18, Malachi somehow manages to attain a medical office, practicing under the ruse of him being a 25-year-old doctor. Malachi had managed to deceive an investor to being a business partner who would contribute $10,000 into getting this office. According to the Facebook page associated with the practice, Malachi claimed to have offered holistic and urgent care as well as family counseling at the New Birth New Life Center. Certain journalists in Florida were privy to Malachi and his medical impersonation schemes and actually went to this place to do a sort of ambush interview with him. When confronted by journalists, Malachi would say he never claimed to be a doctor, even going as far as taping over the M in the MD next to his name by one of the doors. Instead, he says he is an ND, or a naturopathic doctor.
You've got a lot of sites online, all claiming that you're a doctor.
Well, no, they don't claim medical doctor, as I am aware of. If you could stop recording, please, I would like that.
Love Robinson says he is not an MD, as his taped-over clinic sign says. That's a mistake, he says, that he didn't authorize. But an ND, or naturopathic doctor.
The state of Florida doesn't officially license naturopathic doctors. Literally anyone in Florida could call themselves that and it wouldn't be illegal. In one famous interview, Malachi brags to reporters, touting various accomplishments and patient recoveries that he had facilitated.
I've done a lot of courses in institutions, locally and some non-locally in alternative medicine. I've attended many conventions and conferences, and I've done many exams.
The level of fraud Malachi had managed to pull off at this point is honestly impressive, but he couldn't escape the medical board and the government forever. For quite some time, the Florida Department of Health had been investigating Malachi, and specifically his internet listings. Through various tips submitted to their office, the department had compiled a mountain of evidence suggesting that Malachi was fraudulently attempting to practice medicine. On February 16th of 2016, Malachi was busted in a sting operation after performing a medical exam on an undercover agent. The agent visiting Malachi's clinic complaining of an itchy throat. While Malachi would admit to the exam, he claimed that no diagnoses were ever issued nor prescriptions given, adding again that he was not impersonating a doctor. Malachi's arrest would go viral on the internet, and the world became fascinated by this 18-year-old kid who was impersonating a physician. Malachi would later be charged with 7 counts of grand theft and forgery after it was discovered that Malachi had allegedly stolen money from one of his patients' bank accounts. After posting a $21,000 bail, Malachi sat down for an interview where he would again claim that he never titled himself an MD.
Many types of degrees out there that hold the title as doctor, whether they are a physicist or an engineer. Just because someone has the title doctor in front of their name does not necessarily imply MD.
But even if Malachi never claimed he was an MD, which is not true, other evidence started coming to the surface that just painted him as a straight-up fraud regardless. In one broadcast, it was revealed that an elderly woman was treated by Malachi for severe stomach pain and was charged $3,500 for the meager service.
God.
And even while out on bail and facing criminal charges, Malachi still couldn't stay out of trouble. As sometime after posting bail, Malachi was arrested in the state of Virginia for lying in an attempt to get a $35,000 loan to purchase a Jaguar, reportedly claiming he was a physician and was purchasing vehicles for himself and his grandmother. Malachi would be compelled to serve a year in jail in Virginia and was later extradited to Florida to face trial for his fraud charges. During his 2018 trial, Malachi's grandfather defended the young man, saying that Malachi was just trying to help people and made the wrong decisions in doing so.
He was always trying to help people, help somebody. He just made some wrong choices.
In January of 2018, Malachi pled guilty to grand theft, practicing medicine without a license, and other charges. He would be sentenced to serve 3.5 years in a maximum security prison in Fort Myers, Florida. While incarcerated, Malachi did an interview with Inside Edition where he shed some light on why he did what he did. Basically, he always wanted to be a physician and help people, and he still wanted to be a doctor when he got out. Fucking good luck with that, dude.
I 100% regret what I've done. And the reason being is that because, number one, I've messed my life up, a great deal.
You still want to be a doctor?
I do.
On September 23rd of 2019, Malachi was released from prison after serving 20 months. And you think after spending a good deal of time in prison, Malachi would, try to live life on the straight and narrow, avoid trouble. Well, at least he doesn't impersonate any more doctors, but he does get in fucking trouble. In January of 2020, under the name Alex Robinson, it was being reported by police that he had gotten a job at the United States of Freight, a shipping brokerage based in Delray Beach. Delray police claimed that Malachi had stolen more than $10,000 from the company by diverting company payments to his own bank account. When suspected of stealing, Malachi texted his boss and apologized, saying that he didn't want to go to jail. In December of 2022, Malachi would plead guilty to stealing more than $10,000 from his employer. He received a sentence of over 2 years and 4 months. At the time of me making this video, Malachi is now in prison and is 25 years old, the same age he claimed to be when he was posing as a physician. And what has been a life filled with fraud, that's the ongoing story of Malachi Love Robinson.
This pisses me off, stolen valor people.
If you've spent any good time on YouTube, there's a high chance you've likely gone down one of these stolen valor rabbit holes. You know, these videos where like a former serviceman catches some guy in a shoddy military uniform in public and confronts them over essentially faking being in the Army, Navy, whatever.
Because I'm a United States Army fucking Ranger and this guy is not.
My friend,
I have 4 brothers who died with this goddamn tab on their arm.
There are thousands of videos like this on YouTube, but arguably the most popular and most compelling by way of its video footage is the case of Sean Yetman. But before we get into Yetman, let's talk a bit about stolen valor itself. The Stolen Valor Act, passed in 2005, made it a misdemeanor crime to falsely represent oneself as having received any sort of military decoration or medal. And if convicted of committing stolen valor, one can face up to a year in federal prison. A revised version of the law in 2013 made it a crime for a person to fraudulently claim to have received a valor award with the intention of obtaining money, property, or other tangible benefit. The motivation for one to want to commit stolen valor is pretty obvious. They want the respect that comes with being a combat veteran or a military serviceman, and they also want the monetary incentives such as military discounts. And with mentioning military discounts, that brings us to alleged stolen valor committer Sean Yetman. In 2014, Sean Yetman was caught on video at the Oxford Valley Mall in Pennsylvania masquerading as an Army Ranger. The video showcasing this man went viral on YouTube and got over 10 million views. The video being filmed by a man named Ryan Burke, who is a former Army infantryman. In the video, Ryan Burke approaches Sean under the ruse of being in awe of his military decorum and wanting his kid to be able to meet the guy.
Hey, sir. Hey, my son would like to meet you. He really admires guys in the Army. Hey, buddy. I'm Sean.
Suspicious of Sean committing stolen valor, he almost immediately starts quizzing the guy about the minutia of military decorum. And it doesn't go well for Sean.
What unit were you in?
I'm with the 2nd Battalion Rangers.
75th?
2nd.
We're 75th Ranger Regiment with the 2nd Battalion.
He starts to ask about questions and details of Sean's role as a soldier, his tours, and his campaigns. Sean had found himself in a public interrogation.
Where'd you get your 3 CIBs at?
Afghanistan.
All 3?
All 3.
Can't
You
do
know you
that.
need to be in 3 different campaigns to get 3 CIBs, right?
This one was from Afghanistan.
Okay.
That's for my ration.
Okay.
And that was for my 2nd rotation back to Afghanistan.
You know, no matter how many you do, you can only get 1.
When explaining his resume, Sean was essentially describing a Call of Duty character or some fucking movie hero.
That was called Attack 1. All I do is I go out on missions. My campaign took me outside of mission line.
As the interrogation continues, Ryan's demeanor slowly switches from inquisitive to outrage, and he starts publicly chastising this alleged stolen valor committer.
He's calling a staff sergeant when he's wearing the rank of a staff sergeant. That makes much sense.
Near the end of it, you can literally hear Ryan yelling out stolen valor in the mall.
Here it is, guys. Stolen valor at its finest. Wearing a United States Army uniform. Why don't you just admit you're phony? Stolen valor. Right here. Stolen valor!
After the video was published to YouTube, it went viral and thousands of comments started flooding in. Many commenters agreeing with Ryan on this situation. Bro, this guy is a straight up legit hardcore veteran. He fought in the food court wars under General Sal. Dude, this guy isn't a phony. He's stationed at Camp KFC and reports to Colonel Sanders. Scrolling through these comments, I realized this guy might be the most experienced soldier I've ever seen. He fought in so many different wars. Brian Burke was concerned that Sean had been using this military attire to solicit military discounts throughout the mall, as it was Black Friday at the time. After the story went viral on YouTube, news reporters got a hold of Sean Yetman's contact information and bombarded him with calls over the matter. Some even went to his house and tried to get a hold of him there. At the residence, a woman would answer the door and claimed that Yetman had a military background but wouldn't provide any additional details. Yetman's fiance, Adrian Lally, said that the blowback from the video had been vicious and Sean had lost his job and had a complete mental breakdown. Quote, "The phone calls do not stop, and we are now hearing death threats. All of this has us concerned for our children and their safety." She wrote, quote, "He is a good man with a big heart, and this backlash has spiraled him into a deep depression." Adrian Lally also maintained that Sean didn't receive any sort of military discounts while shopping. While the fiancé claimed the man had served, it's been reported that Yetman's name was never found in any database of Army members who had undergone Ranger training at Fort Benning. The man hadn't been criminally charged but was facing a lot of harassment, and this was Ryan Burke's comment on that. "That's a shame. My intention was to have this guy put on blast."
Sorry about that, guys.
And this was Ryan Burke's comment on that. "That's a shame. My intention was to have this guy put on blast so he stops doing it." And if it was in fact true that Sean Yetman committed stolen valor, it wouldn't have even been the first time that he had done something similar to that. It was later discovered that in 2003, Sean Yetman was arrested while wearing the coat of a Philadelphia police officer that had died in the line of duty.
Wow.
Sean was sentenced to 3 months of probation for that crime. It's been several years since the posting date of this alleged stolen valor incident, and it doesn't appear that the man featured in the video ever faced any sort of criminal prosecution. Rather, it appears his fate is to forever remain a laughingstock on YouTube. Fraudulent impersonators and imposters usually come in the form of individuals trying to masquerade as a professional or a sort of esteemed practice, such as a doctor, a military serviceman, or a police officer. Well, there's also a cohort of individuals that fake being disabled to get special treatment. And that's what this chapter is all about. Take, for example, the case of Rutledge Diaz IV. For over a year and a half, this 29-year-old Louisiana man used babysitting apps to secure women's aid in taking care of his 17-year-old brother named Corey, who was said to be mentally and physically disabled. However, Corey wasn't actually a real person, and Rutledge would use this persona to trick medical workers into coming to his house and changing his diapers. Rutledge had convinced these women to treat Corey like he was a child. And he would invite these women to his house under the premise of them taking care of Corey when he in fact was Corey and was faking being disabled. On top of diaper changes, Rutledge would also convince these girls to transport him around town in a child's car seat. Rutledge pulled this sick scam on multiple women, and his diapers changed many hands in the process. But he couldn't role-play as a disabled person forever. Eventually, he got exposed. On November 13th of 2019, Louisiana State Police arrested Rutledge Diaz for convincing a series of women to change his diapers after a woman reported suspicions to police. Investigators say that Rutledge confessed and claimed that he was trying to address his own sexual trauma. As a result of his crimes, he was hit with 4 counts of sex trafficking. Diaz initially pleaded guilty to the charges, but immediately withdrew his plea after finding out the victims and prosecutors were requesting jail time for him. Rutledge's attorney claimed that she didn't realize prosecutors would push for incarceration. The man was facing up to 10 years for the charges. As a result of his crimes, a judge would sentence Rutledge to serve 5 years probation, where he was also requested to maintain employment, undergo internet addiction counseling, and is banned from using social media. He was also compelled to complete 400 hours of community service. The women that were deceived into changing the diapers were concerned that probation wasn't enough and that he would reoffend. Unfortunately, they were correct. Police discovered that while on probation, Rutledge was in contact with a Jefferson Parish woman who he had hired to change his diapers. Rutledge sent the woman $50 in advance and told her that he had prior issues and was being cared for by family members. Because of this, he would be arrested in December of 2021 and charged with more human trafficking charges. The man later pled guilty and received 1 year in prison and 5 years of probation for this infraction, which pretty much serves as the end of Rutledge's story for the time being. But surprisingly enough, that's not the only individual that has faked being disabled for diaper changes. Meet Paul Anthony Menchaca. This is the face of a man accused of faking Down syndrome in an effort to get favors from female medical workers.
Oh my God.
In 2018, Paul Anthony Menchaca, 31 years old at the time, worked as a school crossing guard. This man decided to take advantage of mobile apps like CareLinks and Care.com. Using these apps, Paul allegedly posed as a woman named Amy, and using this Amy persona would hire women to take care of her son. Amy being Paul and the son also being Paul. Using Care apps, Paul managed to trick the women to go to his residence, where he would act extremely disabled, essentially role-playing as if he had Down syndrome. One woman claimed that she changed his diaper and helped him bathe over 30 times.
Oh my
Quote,
God.
he needed shower and grooming. He couldn't use the bathroom himself. He couldn't really be alone by himself. He acted like a child. His whole demeanor was childlike. He would act in tantrums, talk like a child, act like a child. Another caregiver is quoted as saying, "He did ask me a few times to come over and help him shower, but I was incredibly uncomfortable with that." In addition to diaper changes and bathing care, Paul, while posing as Amy, would tell these caregivers to take him on trips and take him shopping as well. Posing as Amy, Paul would allegedly request that caregivers give special attention to sensitive areas of the body, requesting thorough cleanings of his genitals. Women involved with these cleanings later reported to police that Menchaca would become sexually aroused when they put their hands around his private parts. Some claim that during cleanings he could be seen smiling and would even clap. This diaper-changing abuser would eventually be busted in September of 2018. Menchaca was exposed after one of his caregivers became suspicious of the Amy persona and dug into Menchaca's background and found he had a different family entirely. This would result in the caregiver talking to the family, explaining what they were doing for Menchaca. The family would explain that their son didn't have Down syndrome and certainly didn't need any sort of diaper changing or bathing assistance. Soon after discovering this, the mortified caregiver would call police. In September of 2018, Paul Anthony Menchaca was arrested and charged with 3 counts of sexual abuse and 1 count of fraudulent schemes. In a hearing, Menchaca addressed the court, stating the following: Quote, I just want to let you know I am special needs. I do have a low IQ level, and my mom and dad both have paperwork to prove that. And I'm starting to talk to my dad about getting me some help and getting me into a counselor and probably like a rehab center to talk to somebody. According to the Maricopa County Court Records website, it appears Paul pled guilty to at least one count of sexual abuse and seems to have also received some probation. That's me saying it appears that way, though. I can't speak with confidence regarding the outcome of his trial. Whatever the case, the reports describing Paul's alleged behavior in this story, extremely disturbing stuff. One of the most disturbing professions that one could pose as is that of a police officer. A police badge comes with authority and power that can easily be exploited by one with bad intentions. There have been many police impersonators out there, but few as strange as the case of the 18-year-old autistic one. The story begins on September 9th of 2019, when an Albuquerque police officer witnessed a young man in civilian clothing and a police badge on his belt performing a traffic stop near Interstate 40. This peculiar-looking would-be law enforcer was 18-year-old Brendan Wazinski. The officer pulls his vehicle over to investigate the suspicious circumstance. When questioned by the officer, he seemed nervous and claimed to be under-equipped and not in uniform. Brendan claimed to be on his way to the courthouse when he spotted the person he pulled over going 120 miles an hour. Brendan tries his best to convince the real police officer that he's legit, but his efforts don't go over well.
Do you have an ID with you?
This is all I got on me. Like I said, I'm under-equipped. I was just heading over there to the courthouse.
To the courthouse for what?
To get my crap.
Okay.
I know, it makes no sense. I caught him going 120 down I-40.
Okay. Why do you have lights on this vehicle?
Personal. I know.
Do you have an ID with you at all?
No, I keep it on my uniform.
Okay. What's your name?
Brendan Wazinski.
The officer who discovered Brendan called a supervisor over the matter who recommended he put Brendan in the back of his squad car.
Hold on. Do you mind if I call my wife and tell her I'm not coming home tonight?
So I need you to lean back a little bit. Thank you.
Can I please tell my wife?
Brendan was arrested and taken back to the police station where he was questioned. When asked about the flashing lights on his vehicle, he said that he installed them himself and acknowledged the police radio inside of his car. Brendan then claimed that his badge was from his father, who had died in the line of duty while working as a policeman. Internal investigation revealed that only 8 officers had been killed at that department in the line of duty, and his father was not one of them. Brendan Wazinski was charged with impersonating a police officer. Body cam footage showcasing his detainment went viral on social media, and hilarity ensued. Update: Brendan was dropped of all charges after impersonating the judge in his own trial. It's insane how disturbing this actually is. He has future serial killer written all over him. When his parents told him he could be anything he wanted, he took it literally. Imagine if a fake cop was arrested by another fake cop. In the months following the arrest and charges, Brendan's family said that he had gotten a massive amount of death threats and had lost jobs over the matter. Quote, not being able to support his family is rough. He has a 4-month-old little girl. It adds to his depression. Attorneys from the Public Defender's Office said that Brendan had been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and suggested that these ailments played a hand in his decision to pretend to be a deputy. They even requested mental health court when a psychologist and clinician both recommended him for it. But the district attorney denied the request. Quote, he chose to make the decision he made that evening. By his own admission, he even knew what he was doing was wrong. On March 16th of 2020, Brendan showed up to court to plead no contest for impersonating a peace officer. The judge sentenced him to a year on probation and ruled that he can't carry any firearms, deadly weapons, or handcuffs, and ordered an evaluation for counseling. In July of 2020, Brendan would violate his probation after failing to attend a probation meeting. His probation officer says, quote, at this point, Your Honor, I am asking that the defendant be sanctioned in custody for 10 days and his probation be reinstated with zero tolerance for further violations. These violations were not getting a psych exam, providing a false address, and missing a scheduled meeting. After this summer of 2020 violation, Brendan has remained out of trouble. We'll have to wait and see if this peculiar young man ever reoffends.
Wow. Now, I've seen a few of these.
You might imagine that landing a job where one communicates government messages to citizens would require a bit of vetting before hiring. But in all reality, there have been multiple instances of ASL fraud, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most bizarre. As of 2017, the year that this story took place, there were 13 states that required sign language interpreters to hold state licenses. Florida was not one of them. On November 28th of 2017, the Seminole County, Florida police held a news conference announcing the arrest of a Seminole Heights murder suspect. During the televised broadcast with news crews present, Police Chief Dugan spoke to the public about the capture of an alleged serial killer. The press conference featured many family members of those affected by the killer's actions. One of these family members in attendance was actually deaf and knew sign language. So as this press conference is going on and the ASL interpreter is signing away, this deaf family member finds that the sign language interpreter is just putting out complete gibberish. Seminole government agencies also started getting phone calls from concerned citizens with complaints that the ASL interpreter was signing unintelligible nonsense. The goal of this police press conference intended to ease the minds of the Seminole Heights residents. They had captured a serial killer, but in all honesty, it just created more bewilderment and opened up a new can of worms. What the fuck was going on with this sign language interpreter? Well, the signer in question was a woman named Derlin Roberts. According to reports, Derlin showed up at the police press conference and posed as an interpreter. Tampa police spokesman Steve Haggerty told reporters that he didn't ask enough questions about the woman's ability. Quote, "From what I understand, she knows enough about sign language that she was able to fake it." Haggerty also said that Roberts appeared to know what she was doing. The usual procedure for hiring an interpreter in Tampa is that the city relies on prepaid contractors to acquire them. Police simply assumed that Derlin was hired by one of these contractors and let her in. Footage from the events showed Derlin signing away before anyone had even spoken. According to experts, this is what some of the signing that Derlin communicated translated into. 51 hours ago, 0/12/22, murder 3 minutes, and 14 weeks ago, in old murder 45,55,000 plea 10 arrest murder Bush 3
she has
age
murder
24. Yeah, that was an actual segment communicated by Derlin signing during this press conference. She's a total expert, right? Here's some of the highlights of Roberts' performance.
At this point, I don't think it's getting any better. The sound is what it is.
We're doing the preliminary mic checks.
Good evening. As you recall, on October 9th, Benjamin Mitchell was 22 years old and he was murdered. That was 51 days ago. About 2:30 this afternoon, we received some information about Mr. Donaldson having a firearm at the McDonald's.
Oh my God. These folks deserve the credit. Obviously, they were very concerned spotting a gun. I don't know how much they knew about it. This was actually a serial murderer, or if they were just concerned about the gun. But what do you have to say about that?
We got a break. Somebody stepped up and did the right thing, and that's what we needed. We had said all along that no tip is too small, and somebody stepped forward and gave us what we needed.
The internet would quickly discover this bizarre video, and after learning of the circumstances would go to comment sections to share their opinions on the matter. That fake sign language lady is going straight to hell. This is so funny, LOL. Can't stop laughing. Had I known that sign language is going to be this easy, I would have done the same myself. The absolute audacity to stand there and pretend to do sign language on TV. LOL. Maybe we should just use subtitles. At least her sign for murdering is the same all the way through.
That's what I said.
She just throwing her hands up in the air and literally waving like she don't care. The audacity. And that fool looked so confident standing front and center. While this footage is definitely comical in many ways, the whole premise of this is quite disturbing to think that someone could be deranged enough to not only fake sign language, alright, but want to in the first place, and the fact that they were able to do it for a government agency. Not to mention that one of the victims of the serial killer was deaf and in the audience at the time. Like, they're just, when it rains, it pours, I guess. Jesus Christ. A police spokesman later told reporters that Derlin Roberts wouldn't be facing any criminal charges over the matter. Their justification for not wanting to press charges being that they didn't do the proper research in vetting this woman's credentials and didn't think that they would be able to prosecute her with that in mind. The spokesman's quoted as saying, "I don't know if she was just trying to be helpful and just didn't do a good job. I don't know if she was trying to put something over on somebody. I have no idea." News reports attempted to get into contact with Roberts and even went to her home, but never got an answer. While what she did was a major ethical violation, it technically wasn't criminal. That being said though, a look into this woman's history indicates a streak of fraud. In fact, doing a bit of browsing through Derlin Roberts' criminal history, one can find a yearbook of mugshots with an arrest history spanning back over 24 years, from charges ranging from aggravated battery to burglary to false imprisonment, grand theft, fraud, witness tampering, petite theft, writing bad checks, and more. One of Derlin's most notorious fraud charges stems from a time where she scammed a school for the disabled. According to reports, back in 2004, Derlin ran the Sago Palm Education Academy, a private school for children with special needs. While in this management position, Roberts misappropriated a fortune in education funds from the Florida McKay Scholarship Fund and used that money for her own personal benefit in a scheme that stretched from 2004 to 2009. It's alleged that the woman stole over $350,000 from the fund. It's also said that Roberts assumed the identity of a former employee, Angela Darien, a psychologist and social worker who quit the school after just a few weeks when Roberts failed to pay her. Roberts assumed Angela's identity in 2004 after authorities revoked funding due to her criminal past. After quitting, Angela Darien had moved to New York and had no idea that her identity was stolen by Roberts. Once investigators discovered that Derlin had committed identity fraud on this woman, they informed Angela that her identity had been stolen. She says, quote, "It was something out of a fairy tale book, you know? Not even a fairy tale book, something out of a horror book. They should throw the key away on her." When the scheme finally unraveled, Roberts was charged with organized fraud and grand theft. She was sentenced to serve 5 years in prison. Angela Darien comments further, "5 years is not enough for what she did to these children. What she did to the community, what she did to the parents, what she did to me, 5 years is not enough." After the bizarre ASL scheme that Derlin had committed in 2017, Angela Darien was actually contacted for comment regarding this new sort of deception that Derlin was up to. As to why she thinks Derlin did this, she says, quote, "It puts her back in the limelight to give her credibility to do whatever she needs to do. She's legit because she's on TV and she's interpreting and blah, blah, blah. So if they trust her, we can trust her. So she might have been looking for credibility." Derlin Roberts will forever live in infamy as being a member of the motley crew of charlatans that have attempted to fake sign language. As for Tampa police, the entire event was a complete embarrassment. But that, my friends, were the internet's most viral impersonators. Let me know what you thought about this video down below in the comments section, and let me know who or what you want me to talk about next.